Hi, everyone. For the author study, I chose to research Phyllis Reynolds Naylor. I'm mostly going to focus on how her books relate to her real life. In particular, I'm going to focus on the Alice McKinley series. So, she was born in Indiana during the Great Depression. And she started telling stories actually when she was in kindergarten during circle time. She would share her stories, and the teacher would say, Phyllis, that's enough. You have to let someone else speak. At any rate, her teacher would write down the stories, and then later she would send the stories home so the parents could read them. Growing up, she didn't have a lot of money. She had an older sister, and she had a younger brother. She was very inspired by her sister and always tried to be like her sister. She married her high school sweetheart. Things went wrong after being married for a few years. Her husband became clinically insane and had dealt with a lot of mental health problems, and he then had to go to a psych ward for a while for rehabilitation. At that point, they realized that they were not meant to be together, and they parted their separate ways. She later remarried about 15 years later, a guy named Rex, and at that point, she had her two sons. One second, everyone. Sorry about that. So there are a number of themes that from her books that are related to her everyday life, the life that she lived. And I think that that's important for students to realize is that a lot of books are based upon events that really happened. Naylor wrote a book called Crazy Love. That's not part of the Alice series, but I did incorporate it into this presentation. It was based on her life with her first husband. So she wrote about how she met her husband in high school and how she had this whole idea of what romance really was. You know, they fell in love and they got married right out of high school, and then everything went wrong. And, she had to sell stories, short stories to help support herself and take out another mortgage on her house when her husband needed medical treatment because they couldn't afford it. So, Crazy Love is based on her first marriage to her husband. Um, so some of the themes that I was able to see throughout the books, now I'm focusing specifically on the Alice McKinley series. Um, so Phyllis's sister, Norma, died of cancer when she was a young adult, and that's similar to the Alice series because Alice's mother died of leukemia. Um, so you could see how someone has the idea that someone really, really close and then losing them. She also had a love for music. She actually could play the piano by ear, which is interesting because Alice McKinley's father could also do the same thing. He was a music major, he ran his own music store. Alice loved music. So that's another theme that I saw. Um, the Alice McKinley has these, romantic views on what marriage should be, and it's all about love and this and that and whatnot, and a happy, happy life. And in a way, I think that that is how Phyllis was when she married her first husband. When she was a little bit, still isn't seeing how realistic marriage is, and thinking of it in a very unrealistic way. Um, so in the Alice McKinley series, Alice has an older brother named Lester, and Alice goes to Lester for a lot of advice. That's similar to Phyllis's own life growing up. She went to her sister for Norma for lots of advice and also looked up to her sister. She wanted to be just like her sister. She tried out for everything her sister tried out for. And that's also kind of the same thing that goes along with Alice's character. She looks up to her cousin Carol, and she actually tries to do a lot of things that Carol does, whether it be put on makeup or put on her first bra or any of those type of things. Those were all things that Phyllis experienced, and so did Alice. Um, while looking through different sources, I noticed that a lot of Phyllis's stories about her friendships and stuff are incorporated in all the Alice books through the trio of friendship between Alice, Pamela, Elizabeth, and then later in her later books, Gwen. So that's another theme that I was able to see. And then on the Phyllis Reynolds Naylor website, it actually says that um, she wrote about Alice because Alice was the daughter that she never had. She always wanted a daughter. She didn't get a daughter. So instead of having a real daughter, she wrote, she had a fictional daughter. So I thought that was kind of cool. So when it all started for Phyllis, so she began writing her own books in fourth grade. She drew illustrations to go along with stories. Now, her family didn't have a lot of money at the time, so she took any scrap paper that she found around the house, stapled it together, and made books. She also drew pictures to go along with her writing. In sixth grade, she composed a poem for read aloud for a celebration they were having for the principal of the school. And that's when she first shared her work with others, and then she performed creative writing assignments in high school and was a senior class poet at graduation. So she had a lot of accomplishments. She published over 120 books. Her website currently says that she's working on another book. It's an adult book. She won't say what the book is about, but she is currently still writing. She has published over 2,000 short stories and has won a Newbery Medal. She has 27 books in her Alice series. And then I have a quote from her, and it says, "Getting an idea for a book is not hard for me. Keeping other ideas away while I am working on one story is what is difficult. My books are based on things that have happened to me, things I have heard about, all mixed in my imagination." So that goes to show that not everything that she writes about in her books has to do with her everyday life. So the Alice series, she started writing this series at the age of 50 when she became a grandmother, which I thought was really interesting. So there are some experiences that Alice experienced in the book that actually are things that Phyllis experienced in her real life. So Alice received her first kiss from Patrick on a porch swing, and that's where Phyllis received her first kiss. When she was in school, this was in the Starting with Alice book, Phyllis pretended that she was Jane and kind of reenacted the whole Tarzan and Jane scene, and that also happened in the Alice book. And friendships are similar to her own. Some of the problems that she went through with her friends and different difficulties that she faced are also the same things that Alice faces in her books. She had her husband Rex read all of her books before she sent them to her editor. She decided to stop writing her books when her husband passed away. There are a lot of controversial topics in these books: sex, sexual orientation, masturbation, death, and coming of age. And these are all things that teens can relate to. And I think that that's very important because they're real life experiences that teens are going to go through. Now, some of her books have been challenged throughout the years because of these controversial topics, but they are important topics about coming of age that students need to realize. The awesome thing about her books is actually the Alice series starts out and Alice is only 8, and then when the Alice series ends, Alice is 18. So the first book is Starting with Alice. The last book is called Now I'll Tell You Everything. So it's very interesting how as the character has grown. Okay, we start out with it was first her books in the children's books, and then they were in the and then slowly they made their way to the young adult books as the content in the books became more mature. So I thought that was really interesting. And me, I grew up reading these books. I started with Alice when I was, around 8, 9, and I have read every single book in this series. And it was a beloved series that made me love reading. And I think that any young girl would love to read these books. And I also think that these books would be really good for struggling readers as well because students are really able to relate to the topics in this book. They find them very relevant. There's not any background knowledge that they really need to know in order to understand these books. And I don't think that these books are written at a particularly hard Lexi level either. And here are my sources. So if you haven't read the Alice McKinley books, you definitely have to. It's also, her first couple books are made into a movie. So please check out the series if you haven't already.